Hello, and welcome back to What Even Happens in Metal Gear Solid 2. We'll pick back up with the start of the plant chapter, covering for the duration of this video what I'll be calling Scenario, or S1, the bomb scare. The central chapter of MGS2, Plant, begins around dawn's early light on April 29, 2009. On the eve of the anniversary of George Washington's inaugural address at Federal Hall.
Snake, do you remember the sinking of that tanker 2 years ago?
Of course.
Though the first word of the opening spoken is Snake, will not be playing as Snake, but his stand-in, Jack. A supposed rookie operative of the legendary high-tech Special Operations Force, U.S. Army Unit FOXHOUND, dispatched on a clandestine operation coinciding with a rival one by the Navy SEAL 10 teams Alpha and Bravo. Raiden is a counter-terror commando specializing in espionage. His mission is to investigate the hostage takeover at offshore naval remediation plant The Big Shell, where terrorists, aided and abetted by Russian mercenaries, have captured the President, James Johnson. Calling themselves the Sons of Liberty, the terrorists are demanding a $30 billion ransom. Or else, they'll destroy the cleanup facility, thereby poisoning the lower Manhattan coastline for generations.
And the sea will turn into a toxic soup for centuries, becoming the worst environmental disaster in history.
And the plant she named Liberty Tree.
On his way in, Jack spots evidence of a third intruder besides himself and the SEALs. But we're too late to catch this man's face. Disregarding that, Jack is horrified by several other apparent last-minute changes, or unexpected left turns.
The lights on the plant struts are functioning. I won't have to use the IR goggles.
And by the way, Snake, we're changing your code name for all following communication.
What's wrong with Snake?
Just a precaution. You are now designated Raiden. This will be your first sneaking mission.
We learn our mission data will be handled by Jack's civilian analyst girlfriend, Rose, and that our cryptonym switched from Snake to Raiden because the terrorist leader supposedly calls himself Solid Snake, Jack's personal hero, disgraced by the eco-terrorist attack that he's been publicly blamed for, which made the Big Shell necessary to begin with. Except this can't be the real Solid Snake. Our commanding officer, Colonel Campbell, insists that the real Snake died during that raid on that oil tanker here 2 years ago.
Could he have survived?
Not a chance.
Ignoring Rosemary's riddle about what day it is tomorrow,
April 30th. Is there something special about it?
Isn't there?
Jack infiltrates the Big Shell's Shell 1 block, starting with Strut A. At the same time that Navy SEAL 10 Alpha Team breach the roof of Strut B. Bravo Team, a group of demolition specialists, are slightly staggered, arriving after Alpha Team thanks to the two VIP civilians in tow, which necessitate a conventional rooftop landing. The Big Shell's wired with a host of sensors and surveillance grids, which biomagnetically track the movements of everyone on board. According to this or some other source of intel, the SEALs have ascertained that the President is being held on Strut B.
SEAL Team 10 has landed on Struts B and C.
And the President?
Seems he was spotted on Strut B.
Strut B?
But this is a trap. What's worse, the President isn't even a prisoner. He's an accomplice. The terrorists' upper echelon, comprised of members of the former Navy counterterrorism outfit Dead Cell, make quick work of both SEAL 10 teams, while the Navy's choppers are then shot down by the terrorists' secret weapon, or at least the first, a Harrier II fighter jet. As a clandestine, so-called black operative, Jack can only spectate as the SEALs are eradicated in this way. According to Campbell, this failed raid now risks reprisal. Setting aside our primary objectives for now of rescuing the president and stopping the terrorists, Raiden must begin by disarming the many secret caches of terrorist C4 bombs distributed throughout the facility. Helping him will be two men, Peter Stillman,
a poor old man who got dragged along for this picnic,
and Iroquois Pliskin, Lieutenant Junior Grade. 2 years ago, the tanker incident changed history, transforming the living legend Solid Snake into an eco-terrorist. And a dead one at that, supposedly. What we won't be told before the end is that our new name, like those of Metal Gear projects Rex and Ray, traces its lineage back to the Pacific War between America and Japan. Ironically, the Big Shell plant, much like the video game it is in, MGS2, only exists as a sort of false reality. One generated thanks only to a partnership between Japan and America, these two former enemy nations. Presumably, given the corporate logo displayed everywhere, the Big Shell's construction and design were, at least as a state-of-the-art treatment plant, handled by the Zaibatsu-like conglomerate from Hideo Kojima's pre-MGS classic, the adventure game Policenauts, the company named Tokugawa, specifically Tokugawa Heavy Industries. This, too, is a secret reference to the corporate wealthy cliques, meaning Zaibatsus from World War II, who came to infest and then dictate Japanese affairs between world wars. Metal Gear Solid 2 secretly portrays a sort of elaborate experiment as part of something called the S3 plan, created by someone called the Patriots. The Patriots are the true rulers of America, its shadow government or cryptocracy, and the true antagonists of the game. We'll soon learn that the Patriots have held on to power through the 20th century by dominating the flow of information.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
But as the early 21st century and its dot-com revolutions threaten their dominance, the S3 plan is the result. It's been devised as the Patriots' ultimate counterweapon. The meaning? Selection for societal sanity. The S3 plan, in theory, will enable a form of control at the individual, even unconscious level, to then scale up and emerge as a system-wide equilibrium, becoming akin to a new borderless nation, united not by any patch of dirt, but by what it holds in common: a shared context. The best explanation is by analogy. The Patriots, who have already, by the start of the game, mastered the human genome, want as much control over their subjects' memes as their genes. Memes in the Dawkinsian sense, meaning roughly their memory. What's passed down, not through DNA, but through culture, politics, and history. For lack of a better word, the wider social context that we all find ourselves in. It may seem confusing, but it's actually rather simple. You can think of content, meaning everything from real-life words and deeds to events, as pieces on a chessboard. The context for these pieces is chess. Without it, they'd just be random little models of horses and castles. And they'd only have their form as these particularly shaped horses and castles by another context, namely the Staunton chess piece standard, first put into the world's meme pool back in 1849. Roughly, for the rule holders of chess, for the rules themselves, controlling the moves each individual player makes is unnecessary. Because even though there are more variants to chess moves than there are stars in the sky, all the moves or operations that can be legally done have been predetermined, mathematically, in tandem with the chess context well in advance. The Patriots' one and only goal is to remain in control over the not content, not the pieces and the moves that any individual player makes, but the context, the whole game. The game's rules. Not the single nodes, but the connecting bridges. The superstructure governing the pathways down which information can flow.
Demolition is a kind of ideology. It makes no exceptions for time or place.
So, for this experiment, MGS2 portrays, which sets out to formally test the S3 plan or protocol in action, the Patriots have pre-selected someone with particularly bad memes or memories, the former child soldier and war orphan, Jack. Jack is not just traumatized, he's completely cut off from reality, and like the famous analogy or meme of Plato's cavern, he's convinced that he prefers the illusions over anything real. He's convinced, moreover, that the illusions, not the real world, are the real reality.
Raiden. Strange code name.
Makes up for the boring one my parents gave me.
Blinding himself willfully out of fear and pain, preferring bright lies over the darkness of truth, Jack is exactly the kind of American that the S3 plan is designed to enlighten. The question is, can those illusions be used to direct Jack unknowingly yet willingly down his path to rehabilitation? Can Jack's will, perceptions, memories, and even sense of self be manipulated as just more streams of flowing information? Most of all, the S3 plan wants to test whether it will remain effective not in spite of, but because of leaks and exposed artificiality, even when that too is part of the plan's own artifice. The experiment will gradually reveal itself to its subject, Raiden or Jack, by design, all as part of the test itself. But before then, in effect, the big shell, the setting for the S3 plan's exercise, will come to represent Jack, aka Raiden's 1984-style Room 101. It is, in other words, going to become the place that his nightmares will all come true, the place he'll be forced to confront his greatest fears. But unlike the party of Big Brother in Orwell's hideously ecstatic 1984, the Patriots do not seek power nakedly. Their domination over Jack will, unlike 1984's Winston Smith, actually represent, at least on paper, a win-win. The only real tyrannical or totalitarian aspect, perhaps, is the Patriots' total disregard, even contempt for free will and for unregulated or uncontrolled events, now more than ever in the full expanse of the information age. The Patriots only want to improve Jack psychologically for him to serve as a better pawn. Above all, what's most important for the Patriots is to find new ways for their meme, their existence, to self-replicate, mutate, and evolve.
It's our responsibility as rulers. Just as in genetics, unnecessary information and memory must be filtered out to stimulate the evolution of the species.
And you think you're qualified to decide what's necessary and not?
Absolutely. Who else could wade through the sea of garbage you people produce, retrieve valuable truths, and even interpret their meaning for later generations?
That's what it means to create context.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
But is that even your own idea?
Or something Snake told you?
That's the proof of your incompetence right there. You lack the qualifications to exercise free will.
Be right there.
Jack is thrust into a nightmare scenario he's never been trained for.
The way he moved didn't seem human. You won't see that in VR, I guarantee. What is he? One of the members of Dead Cell. A special forces unit created by ex-President George Sears. The name was originally intended to reflect its anti-terrorist functions. The unit would launch unannounced assaults on government complexes for the ultimate terrorism simulation. They were needed to show VR troopers like you how to deal with the real thing.
We, as Raiden, are instructed to finish the Dead SEAL Team's mission, starting with terrorist bomb disposal.
Steady hands and even steadier nerves. They're the ultimate bomb squad. Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal, or EOD technicians, perform some of the most dangerous work in order to keep others from harm's way. They're trained to disarm IEDs, neutralize chemical threats, and render safe nuclear weapons.
The first scenario, S1.
Now you spray this on the sucker and here we go. Simple, huh? The spray freezes the detonator instantly.
Ends with the training wheels removed. Peter Stillman tragically and in folly will die. Pliskin will go offline and missing, leaving Raiden to eliminate the source of the bomb threat, former anti-terror simulation outfit Dead Cell member Fat Man, all by ourselves. Yet ironically, only then will the real events of the Big Shell begin. With this overview done, let's circulate back around the Big Shell to explore Plants S1 with greater detail. The chapter Plant opens 2 years after the prologue, Tanker. Nostalgically though, it's in the exact same spot that the tanker sank. The tanker incident was designed to eventually serve as the subject of one of Jack's many virtual reality exercises. That's right, little did we realize the entire tanker incident was already part of the S3 plan, part of setting the Big Shell's construction into motion. And the Patriot architects behind both superstructures, the Discovery tanker and the Big Shell, were sure to include a lot, both scenario and surroundings-wise, to remind us, as Jack, of the tanker incident that we've experienced through VR, and which really took place 2 years before. But here's the thing, the tanker incident wasn't all that happened in 2007. The single context that Jack's experiment is evaluating whether he can find independently is the other context for his version, his memory of that year, 2007. Namely, the date, April 30th, the day Jack met a girl and Patriot mole named Rosemary. If Jack can be led to remember that April 30th is the exact same day that he met Rose, simply by a series of primers and prompts that take him back by the end physically as well as mentally to the very place that the relationship started, the same place that the federal government of America started 220 years before. If he can do all that, then he will have passed his test. But what is that test? Whether or not only Jack can figure out April 30th, but if he can see Rose as a real person, one beyond her utility, whether the big shell around Jack's heart, the protective bubble or wall that he's built up, can be torn down without the individual bite-sized superstructure that is Jack's psyche tearing itself apart under its own weight in the coming controlled demolition.
The big shell's structural integrity depends on a very exact balance. If both shells lose a strut each, the whole structure will tear itself apart under its own weight.
What do we do?
You should have told me.
Told you what? That I'm a killer and always have been?
No.
What I hate more than anything else in the world is my own past. I didn't want you or anyone to know about it. Now I know why I was chosen for this mission. No one can take him on, take him down, except me. I've been kept alive this long for this. I knew as soon as I saw Solidus.
Jack, I love you the way you are now. You have to believe me. I didn't know anything about you, I admit that. Where you were born, how you grew up. But I know that now, and I know that what I feel for you can only get better. And I'll share in your past if that's the price.
It doesn't work that way. No one can share the burden of what I've done. It's not one of those warm and fuzzy things couples share.
I accept the good and the bad, Jack. That's what you do for someone you love.
I don't want to share my past with anyone. I just want to forget about it.
Jack, I haven't told you, about what I've done.
The last 2 years with you, it's been more than I've ever hoped for.
Jack.
But I can't go any farther.
Can Jack come to realize on his own terms just how empty inside he's been ever since the child soldier traumas from his youth that he's trying so hard to repress? Can he come, or be made to, come face to face with a grim reality through freedom of choice, even when it's explicitly not in his seeming immediate self-interest? Lastly, can Jack undergo therapy advanced and extensive enough to genuinely have a breakthrough on the big shell? The exact breakthrough he's being socially engineered to here. Namely, that regardless of what happens to him or what's in his genes, that he's in charge of the aspects of himself that Jack will select to pass on. Everything beyond DNA, meaning what Richard Dawkins calls in The Selfish Gene memes. Replicators in their fullest and final form. Genes no longer, but now something closer to pure or virtual information in the human pool, the form of ideas. Self-replicating akin to genetic evolution via transmission, culture, and communication. Put simply, Jack is patient zero for a project to transform everyday Americans like him at the beginning into the next generation of patriots, the first citizens in a new America, into someone more qualified to decide and deliberate for themselves over what memes and interpretations will go into tomorrow's history books. How to make a more perfect union in this grand experiment.
With the newly created system, they can fully regulate digital information. High-level information can be categorized in stages, given clearance levels, and deleted as necessary, never to be seen by the public. By deleting such information, the Patriots can shape the course of history as they see fit.
That's all the Patriots need to keep their own meme, own self-replication process alive virtually forever. The S3 plan is envisioned as endowing the Patriots as the founding fathers of a new kind of political and social American mindscape. Raiden is being granted by the end true liberty, which is neither all good or bad, but neutral, and is neither freedom nor slavery, but the combination called responsibility. It takes the S3 plan and its backdrop, the Big Shell incident, to reshape Jack into a fully living human person before he, in the Patriots' eyes anyway, qualifies for the right, in their new revolution, to exercise autonomy. Arriving under the codename Snake, Raiden believes he is, like the famous super soldier Solid Snake was once, a member of the US Army's Next Generation Special Forces unit FOXHOUND. Solid Snake was either in or around the orbit of Unit FOXHOUND, going all the way back to his first ever field mission, 1995's Operation Intrude in 313. FOXHOUND, as it states in the manual for 1998's Metal Gear Solid, was formed by the even more famous super soldier Big Boss as, quote, a shadow unit of elite high-tech soldiers, end quote. And this is exactly the fiction that Jack has been provided, that FOXHOUND remains a real unit, his unit, one that still specializes in high-tech wet works, still even led by its commander from the Zanzibar land disturbance 10 years ago, Colonel Roy Campbell.
This is Snake.
The name Snake is just part of this legend. But the Patriots who are behind this ruse, they're not just liars. They fuse lie and truth until the outside world can no longer tell the difference. Jack believes in the existence, the truth of FOXHOUND on the basis of more than faith. Jump back to the year 2007. That year, Jack was restationed in Manhattan, where he continued to take part in the U.S. Army's Force 21 trials. Envisioned at the turn of the century as a way of bridging the gap between the high-tech so-called revolution in military affairs and the general doctrines and tactics of the U.S. military in general.
I was part of the Army's Force 21 trials.
Force 21? That's about tactical IT deployment, right? Any field experience?
No, not really.
So this is your first.
I've had extensive training, the kind that's indistinguishable from the real thing.
Like what?
Sneaking mission 60, weapons 80, advanced
VR, huh?
But realistic in every way.
A virtual grunt of the digital age, that's just great.
That's far more effective than live exercises.
You don't get injured in VR, do you? Every year a few soldiers die in field exercises.
There's pain sensation in VR and even a sense of reality and urgency. The only difference is it isn't actually happening.
That's the way they want you to think, to remove you from the fear that goes with battle situations. War is a video game. What better way to raise the ultimate soldier?
Part of this for FOXHOUND has, or so Jack believes, involved the adoption of what are in effect training wheels, virtual reality, next-gen field gear, and self-replicating nanomachines. But it's also involved meeting Jack's girlfriend, Rosemary, the Patriot Mole. They've been together ever since a chance encounter in Manhattan in 2007. And this, as I've already intimated, is all part of the S3 Plan's training kernel, a project as big as the original Manhattan Project. Years, if not decades, we'll see in the making. Jack thinks what's going on here at the Big Shell is this. On the eve of a public tour of the cleanup plant by the 44th U.S. President James Johnson, this symbol of 21st century environmentalism has been taken over by terrorists. For this mission, we're told, Jack had his blood swapped for artificial blood by the military, rich in nanomachines. He's also been issued a next-gen sneaking suit, a kind of smart skin called the Skull Suit. With all this high-tech tactical gear, including infrared goggles, Raiden enters the complex feeling that the power balance is very much in his favor. What he doesn't realize is he's being set up for a fall, a nightmarish collision with other realities. First, though, a quick note on the Patriots' inside man. The one they haven't figured out is secretly also working separately to destroy them, Revolver Ocelot. Due to the complexities both of spy world compartmentalization, or the need-to-know principle, and double-blind psychology experiments. Though Ocelot does the Patriots' bidding through most of the coming game, he does so much the same way as Raiden does, operating totally independent from the other American force on site, the Navy SEALs.
SEAL Team 10 is also conducting a rescue operation.
Is this a joint effort?
No. FOXHOUND remains a covert body. Don't alert them to your presence. That is an order.
In other words, Ocelot works for the Patriots, but he does so from the dark. Meaning Jack's CO, Colonel, doesn't always know what Ocelot's done, or when, or why. Or even that it was Ocelot to begin with. It's sort of complicated, but Ocelot in MGS2 has two objectives. Maintain his cover within the Patriots by playing out his role, while exploiting the Big Shell incident to damage the Patriots irreparably, before they can even figure out what's going on. Ocelot goes about these objectives, despite them being contradictory, using one and the same plan. And it involves something the Patriots could have never foreseen: the appearance, thanks to Ocelot, of the real Solid Snake. That's right, Jack's little cosplay exercise as the next-gen Solid Snake is over before it can even begin. 3 is often MGS2's magic number. The real Snake means there's not 1, not 2, but 3 separate standalone counterterrorism operations taking place here at once. The SEALs, Jacks, and Snakes. And this, at the start, not even our CO knows.
There's someone else besides me that wanted to get in badly.
That's not possible.
And that brings up something kind of crucial. What Jack also doesn't know is that Unit FOXHOUND, all his empirical first-hand evidence aside, no longer exists. Nor is this really its legendary commanding officer, Roy Campbell. No, the entire game, Raiden will be talking basically to himself, or at least something born from his own unconscious thoughts. Colonel is in reality the perfect simulation of a real person digitally, also known as a proxy AI. But even this perfect AI is itself artificial, an illusion. Part of him is derived from the artificial blood's nanomachines circulating and filtrating through Jack's own waste processing plant, his body. A second part comes from what Jack does not consciously remember as a high concentration of cerebral implants the Patriots placed inside Jack's skull. The third component of the dummy Colonel Campbell? It's the literal kernel, in computer science terms, of the super-secret AI-powered computer system that the Big Shell and the concealed next-gen super ship arsenal gear that it secretly bestrides both exist to shell, cover, and conceal the AI core called GW. Not that Raiden will notice Colonel is a computer construct anytime soon. No, that plot time bomb is well away from going off. Keeping the fictitious Unit FOXHOUND's cover unblown in every possible sense, not only unblown from the SEALs but also from Raiden, Colonel insists that Jack listens in on the ongoing SEAL Team 10 operation, snatching intercepts from the shadows, maintaining the mission's status as completely clandestine. We hear the SEAL 10 Alpha Team walk into a trap set for them by Unit Dead Cell's commander, Fortune.
Raiden, watch your back. That's a cipher, a type of UAV. Wait a second. I just intercepted new intelligence on the operation being executed by SEAL Team 10.
Intercepted?
As I said before, they need to be kept in the dark about our presence.
So we just listen in.
I'm patching it through.
This is Alpha Zero. We have the president. Is he safe? He is safe. What about the package? Tell the guys upstairs that we've secured the package. Easy money. Good work. Your retrieval is on the way. Come on home. Roger that. Holy! Alpha Zero, report. Damn it, cover the president! Come in, Alpha Zero. This is Alpha Zero. We're under attack. This is crazy. Is that... Alpha Zero, respond.
And all of this is exactly timed. Alpha Team rushes to the president's last GPS blip. The president's being held there alongside the Navy captain, handcuffed to the black case. This briefcase is the nuclear launch button for activating arsenal gear and arming what Dead Cell and President Johnson have been tricked into believing is a next-gen hydrogen bomb.
There's no need to think about this so much. You won't actually be dismantling the bomb. That's not for amateurs. What we'll try here instead is a temporary freezing measure. It's live. You can see it pulsing. Now you spray this on the sucker and... there we go. Simple, huh? The spray freezes the detonator instantly.
How long does the effect last?
There's no way the thing can detonate in this condition. Here, take this with you. It's what they call an ion mobility spectrometer.
Based on the type of scintillators that Peter Stillman brings to the Big Shell, even he seems to have gotten wind of the possibility that there might be a hydrogen bomb here. What neither Jack nor the SEALs realize is that the president is no hostage. Not yet. He's holding up in Strut B for his own protection. The president will presumably faint in the ensuing horror movie scene come to life, when the SEALs meet Dead Cell. Raiden arrives at the president's last known location, only to find a bloody hallway similar to the one created by Cyborg Ninja on Shadow Moses back in 2005. Walking in on Dead Cell member Vamp's decimation of Alpha Team, Jack is saved only by the third and final last-minute replacement. First, Jack as Snake became Raiden, then the analyst became Rose, and now the real Solid Snake is masquerading as a Navy SEAL named J.G. Iroquois Pliskin. Pliskin and Jack are saved when a radio call to Vamp from Fortune, aka Queen, diverts the Romanian knife wizard's attention. This is after Vamp smells Snake and realizes that he smells similarly to Solidus, their real leader, but that we'll get to later. In a major diversion from the predefined script, simulation, or program, Pliskin, who was never factored in to begin with, and who again is only here in a roundabout way thanks to Ocelot working in total secrecy, Pliskin exposes Raiden to nothing but information that his secret AI puppet master, the AI GW, the one behind this simulation of Campbell, would see restricted. What GW doesn't know is that Ocelot has, totally separate from his parallel scheme long-term to take the Patriots down, manipulated the real Snake into appearing in order to better guide Jack down their path and test the S3 plan's ability to deal with unregulated or leaked information. Snake, whether as Pliskin or his revealed real self later on, Solid Snake, will provide Jack a perfect role model necessary for his eventual rehabilitation. After criticizing the fundamental assumptions underpinning Raiden's entire worldview, Pliskin catches sight of evidence that the terrorists have taken the Black Case. Jack doesn't know what that even is, while Pliskin has yet to determine whether this Raiden can be trusted, so he doesn't tell him. Instead, Pliskin, in a clear bit of foreshadowing to Peter Stillman, fakes an injury.
You all right? Give me a few minutes. Must have lost a few more pints than I thought.
While Jack gets to the next reported location of the president, the BC connecting bridge, Pliskin seemingly surveils our activity. The next time that we see him, after Fortune destroys Bravo Team and the Shell 1 Core Western connecting bridge along with them, Pliskin will have resolved to, at the very least, using Raiden, like he later will Olga, for mutual gain. Not that Raiden will notice, because his focus will be on the new mission, S1, bomb disposal. Much of MGS2's events, both true and simulation, occur virtually, as in off-screen. In this case, Jack learns the backup SEAL choppers, in a perfectly prompted, yet genuine reprise of something from MGS1, have been swatted down by the terrorists.
You're not gonna believe this, but they shot down the F-16s we were using as a diversion with a Hind D. Then we got a message from Liquid. He said if we try something like that again, he'll launch the nuke. Snake, hurry up and get in there.
Though conducted by the true enemy leader, Solidus Snake, as a defensive measure, Colonel recontextualizes this for Jack as evidence that the Sons of Liberty might retaliate, subtly according to the fundamental assumptions and logic of nuclear deterrence. Jack is made to feel as though his commanders, his nation, place the welfare of the environment and wider collective, the future, above that of the US president. But in reality, of course, the S1 is just his final exam. The president, secretly a treasonous collaborator, won't genuinely be in danger until after the bombs, when he'll learn Solidus's rhetoric about overthrowing the Patriots at all costs isn't just talk. The main thing about Scenario 1 is it's a type of mission that Jack has never had VR training for, namely bomb disposal. This is the primary goal of today's field test of the entire S3 plan itself, to strengthen the, as it were, informational immune system so that subjects won't find their whole world coming apart at the first sign of contradictory or previously unknown information. Ironically, thanks to the appearance of Pliskin, the AI system itself is now forced to adapt off-book, no differently perhaps than Raiden, just as Ocelot orchestrates. As part of that AI system's test, Raiden and the system are being tested side by side. Soon enough, Colonel GW will conclude the only logical deduction is the seal unknowns from Pliskin to the systems engineer that Stillman reports he entered the plant with probably came from independent, last-minute decisions that the seals made unilaterally.
Is it true that an engineer came in with Stillman?
I wasn't informed of that. It's probably something the SEALs decided on their own.
At any rate, Peter Stillman, a keyed-up Jack almost shoots at first, mistaking his makeshift bomb disposal kit as the opposite. Stillman is a famous bomb disposal expert, whose days in the field ended 5 years ago in 2004, when Stillman lost the use of his leg in a major church bombing. The ensuing explosion also killed women and children. But this public version of events is not the whole truth. In reality, Stillman's leg isn't a prosthetic. We'll find out by the end of S1, it's a fake. That's because he was nowhere near close enough to the explosion to get burned.
No, I should be condemned.
Wait, everybody makes mistakes.
But it's the reasons behind those mistakes that become the real issue.
What do you mean?
The reason that bomb exploded, and the reason that I was saved, is because I was confronted by fear and I couldn't handle it. Halfway through disposing of the bomb, I succumbed to that fear. And when I realized what was going on, I had turned around and was running away from the bomb. The one who paid the price, however, wasn't me. After I regained consciousness from the shock of the blast, the first thing that my eyes met were the corpses of children crushed under a pile of rubble.
Stillman.
Yet, what do you think I felt at that time? A sense of relief. Relieved that it wasn't me.
Wow.
That's not all. At the time, I was known as the top bomb disposal technician in the United States. Now, to someone like me, who had neither a wife nor children, that reputation was everything. I didn't want to lose it. That's why I lied about losing my leg. Ran away from the responsibility that was mine. Closed my eyes to the victims. Stirred up the sympathy of the public.
All right, Stillman, that's enough. For now, let's just worry about what we're going to do about Fat Man's bombs.
Stillman will explain that bomb disposal is a face-off with your own mortality, a one-on-one fight with nothing less than fear itself. That day, he choked under pressure and fled, and he's been living a lie ever since to escape public recriminations, to preserve the unblemished legend of Peter Peg-Legged Pete Stillman, as his surrogate in the absence of any children of his own, anyone to pass on Stillman's genes to the next generation. But Peter won't be forced to reveal any of this until closer to S1's end. For now, he simply provides Jack and Pliskin the scintillator sensors, the coolant sprays, and the keycards that they'll need to put the bombs out of order for at least 24 hours. Where he obtained these keycards, I'll explain in a second. Stillman explains the terrorist bomber Fat Man was once Stillman's student back at Indian Head, the school where Stillman, following that 2004 disaster, wound up teaching. Like a stereotypical serial killer or supercriminal, Fat Man always leaves a calling card, the scent of his cologne. In addition, somewhat like a Batman villain or something, Fat Man is obsessed with time. Also, given the Big Shell's structure, Stillman thinks that there is really only one way Fat Man must have wired it to blow. In all this, Stillman expects to find the predictable logic of a clock. Stillman says there must be a bomb on each of both shells' 6 outer struts. What he doesn't realize is that here, on the Big Shell, forces hiding in the shadows have conspired to make all of Peter Stillman's nightmares, just like Jack's by the end, a reality. Except unlike Jack, Stillman won't be allowed to leave.
If I lock the door, it should be all right. Plenty of food in here too, so you don't need to worry about me. I'll give you instructions by codec from here. Good luck, kid. Bomb disposal is a face-off with your own mortality. Don't let the fear get to you. When you give in to the fear, the darkness comes.
Pliskin, on the other hand, the seemingly more confident of the two, Stillman assigns to Shell 2. Raiden's given Shell 1, and both are provided keycards, which were first given to Stillman by none other than Otacon, who evidently Pliskin doesn't know for sure until this conversation is safe. Initially, I speculated the way that Snake got the fatigues to masquerade as a member of the SEALs was by rendezvousing with Otacon, but this conversation and some asides in the script from this scene seem to demonstrate that's not the case. The two of them don't seem to meet up until near the end of S1. Stillman does mention that Otacon was essentially masquerading as the systems architect for the security on the Big Shell, which I'm inferring to mean that he was pretending to be his sister, Emma Emmerich, but I'm getting ahead of myself. At any rate, with these gifts, Jack and Pliskin get to work, with Stillman coaching them from Strut C, the dining hall, while also working on a backup plan just in case Fat Man has something else up his sleeve. You see, even Fat Man's something else up his sleeve, Stillman expects to follow the logic of a clock. Predictable. Safe. Except none of the bombs are in logical, clockwork, sensible locations. After encountering two new characters on the Big Shell, who are secretly one and the same, the Patriot recruit and Major Pawn, Olga Gorlukovich, as well as the mysterious cyborg ninja, Raiden then gets a hands-on look at the enemy's ground attack aircraft AV-8B Harrier II. But just as Jack seems to conquer his fears and take out all the bombs he needs to, he gets the bad news, again, all occurring off in virtual space. Calling us over the codec, what Stillman didn't tell us in order to protect us from was the fear that all along that he suspected that things were a little too perfect, a little too clockwork. Behind our backs, Stillman asked Pliskin to investigate the bottom of the struts H and L, accessible via pontoon bridge. And Pliskin, lo and behold, has found a concentration of C4s down there, wired to blow on the base of strut H. Fortunately, Stillman has already factored for the eventuality of Fat Man deviating from his tradition. Like I said, even this, he expects to follow a sort of clockwork logic, and at first it seems that it does, leaving a second improvised bomb sensor for us to recover, one built from parts that Stillman, evidently having been briefed about the possibility of a hydrogen bomb somewhere on board, brought along. Explaining the truth behind the darkness of 5 years ago, Stillman is forced to leave Jack and Pliskin to take out the remaining 3 bombs while he rushes to the place that he's growing more terrified must be where Fat Man's true bomb is hiding, the bottom of Shell 2. Getting there on foot, casting aside his fake identity as Pegleg Peter to do so, Stillman finds his worst fears are true. He becomes certain of the location then of the last bomb, the corresponding one to the one at the bottom of Shell 2, which he tells us must be at the bottom of Strut A, where all this began. These other bombs of Fat Man's evidently don't use that telltale trace of cologne. Together, these trio of scentless bombs will, in theory, be enough to bring the entire Big Shell down all at once. But there's a third bomb that Stillman won't find before it's too late. One that uses a technique he never sees coming. Anticipating all these events like clockwork in advance, with, of course, the Patriots' help, Fat Man secretly primed a special bomb with Stillman's name on it, a proximity-triggered C4, waiting for him at the bottom of Shell 2. Evidently, Fat Man predicted that Stillman would come here himself, and apparently this is also set to detonate in a chain reaction the second scentless bomb at the bottom of Strut H. But, and this is sort of a hint that things are not as they seem, that Fat Man is actually our final exam giver for the Patriots, not the scentless one that Raiden is left in the aftermath to disarm at the bottom of Strut A, which you'll notice is not timed to go off with those other two. It's all part of the wider ruse, all essentially smoke and mirrors, to assure that the death of Peter Stillman and the isolation of Raiden occurs just before his first 2 direct big challenges, Fortune and then Fat Man. And that, for now, is where we will end.
So you're the one. You're right on time, I see. I like a punctual man.
Is he Dead Cell?
I am Fat Man. I am the greatest that humanity has to offer, and can you hear it? Hear this rhythm? It's the rhythm of time and life. Don't you love this sound? I used to hang around department store clock counters. Life is short. Bombs tell the time with every moment of their existence, and nothing else announces its own end with such a fanfare. Glad you could make it. The party's about to start. Oh. Yum. Good year. Let's drink the Stillman, shall we?
If you destroy the big shell, you'll never collect your ransom.
Ransom? What are you talking about?
$30 billion in cash.
So that's what's going on, huh?
What the hell are you talking about?
Oh, you'll know soon enough. And I could care less what they plan to do. My ambitions are much more simple. To be the most famous bomber of them all.
You're nuts! No one's gonna give a damn about you!
Oh, yes, they will. I'll go down in history as the man who beat Peter Stillman. That's the only reason I assisted them.
Like hell you beat Stillman. He had your number.
What did you say?
You have nothing of his courage. Or... What are you laughing at?
That croc died a dishonorable death 6 months ago.
6 months ago. The liquidation of Dead Cell.
Call it what you want. Only the right stuff survived that hell. It set me free, you know. Opened the way to a new dimension. So that I could become the emperor among detonation devotees.
You're nothing but a common criminal, and that's the only way people will ever remember you.
How dare you! I'm an artist! That is why I dislike boorish military types. It's time to start the party. This is how it works. I plant a bomb, and it'll explode soon after that. If you prefer to stay in one piece, you'll have to disable my bombs. Laugh and grow fat. Let's move!